All right, teammates. We are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. To my regular listeners, you guys already know what happens when you hit the play button here. We get nothing but the best. And whatever it is you may be struggling with, whatever challenges you maybe have, whether it's business, personal, romantic, whatever it is, we are here to tell you indirectly you are not going through it alone. This is why the show comes out every single day. There's a brand new episode every single day. We don't mess around over here in the Move Swiftly podcast world. So today I have Miss Liz Wolfe of Miss Liz Wolfe Coaching, who really helps entrepreneurs get their mindset right. And there's so many things, so many topics in which we can dive into. But where I want to start, Liz, is I was just listening to you before. You actually grew up on a farm. You said you grew up on a farm and it was, the kind of the blue collar element of what you saw your mom doing that made you really say, hey, business, I can get into business for myself. So, to start things off, let's just kind of go a little back to your background a little bit. And I'm sure the world now is completely different than what you saw growing up. So kind of take us there a little bit and then we can kind of kick things off from there.
Absolutely. Well, when I was 6 years old, my mother and father together bought a 148-acre farm outside of Pittsburgh, which when they bought it didn't have any actual animals on it. But my mother decided cows were too big, horses were too unruly, sheep were the thing to do. So I still remember as a 6-year-old coming home from school and seeing 3 lovely sheep out in the field, looked so bucolic. It was so wonderful.
Wow.
Add 2 zeros to that. So by the time we got 10 years into
Oh man. Oh, yeah, that's a
into
lot.
sheep farming, we had 300 sheep. It was
Right.
there was a lot of going on. There was a lot going on.
Wow. So imagine, well, I got to pause you because I'm thinking of me 6 to 16. I'm only thinking about football, and you're coming home, there's 200 sheep in your house that I'm sure they didn't just let you walk. Like, obviously, you had chores, you had things you needed to be doing to take care of these two.
That's
Crazy.
absolutely right. I would come home from school and TV was not on my agenda. Let me just say
Wow.
that
There
we
you go.
had
Yes.
responsibilities to get out to the barn. Now, it wasn't all work, as it were. I mean, I had a horse, and I spent a lot of really wonderful hours riding my horse with my friends, my sisters. I have 2 older sisters, and one of the things that happened was 3 years into owning the farm was my father decided he was not interested in farming, and my parents got divorced and he moved back to Pittsburgh.
Oh no.
And so we had a very good relationship with my dad. He was very supportive all through my childhood, child care,
That's
child
important,
support,
actually.
and all that. So
I gotta emphasize that because I teach at a school and I deal with a lot of broken homes, a lot of kids who are maybe frustrated because dad has this attitude, mom has this attitude, and so important for us as adults to be just that, adults. Whether the relationship works out or not, as you can clearly hear, is that when you're there for your child, things will move according to plan. But you can't be a child if things don't work out with your significant other. And I think that's a very important point that you made. I actually was listening to you talk about your 25 years of marriage and how your marriage and your business
yeah.
align. But we'll dive more into that later. But go on, I do want to make sure I make those points.
Well, so he was very supportive. He was an engineer. Opposite side of that is then I was with my mom and my 2 sisters. So we had something of a very special experience because there were very few women farmers. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, there weren't any women farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And if there were anyone like that, it was usually because the farmer, the husband had died and the wife was, taking over. That doesn't mean that the wives weren't working very hard on the farm as well and contributing. But we were basically 3 females with sheep in a sea of men with cows, dairy farms. That was the big thing at the time. So we had to be really resourceful to figure out how are we going to make money at this? Because the thing about dairy farming is every day a truck comes and picks up the milk and then you get a steady check. But that's not the way it is with sheep farming. With sheep farming, you shear them once a year and then you take all the wool to what they call a wool pool and they give you money for that. And I think, paid like 60 cents a pound or something.
Mhm.
8 pounds of sheep, you don't have that income source. Go ahead.
So the thing is, so we just recently, Mark and Ann were on the show, and they were talking about how they have a company that talks a lot about agriculture and teaching kids the importance of doing agricultural jobs, right? And the reason I'm bringing them up is because they were talking a lot about teaching kids how to farm and where milk comes from and all that kind of stuff. So as you look back on it now and you see kind of the way technology has taken over and what's happening with the kids and stuff like that, how do you compare and contrast what you may have learned back then in terms of, all right, look, I got to get the sheep there, I mean, I got to get the wool off, and then we got to go process it, and then we got to do all those things, versus now, look, you click a button and all of a sudden you get your finance, you do whatever it is you have to do.
Well, first of all, I raised my kids in New York City because I left Pittsburgh, came to New York City, went to college, then I came to New York City, and I live in New York City. So I always felt it was very important to have my children have some experience of nature. That's the biggest problem we have, is that kids are disconnected from nature. And one of my more proud, this may sound funny, one of my more proud mothering moments was when I went on one of those field trips with my son's 7th grade class.
Outdoor ed? Was it outdoor ed?
It was at the botanical gardens.
Yeah, I remember.
And so we were all there, and everything. And there was this really big beetle. And my son went over and picked up the beetle and was holding the beetle because it was a really cool one.
Mhm.
And all the other kids in the class, who of course were born and raised in New York City, were like, ew, ew, ew. And I thought, I'm so grateful that my son has this appreciation for the natural world that they thought was yucky.
Right.
And I mean, it was a big beetle that was not that, pleasant to have crawling on you, but he had some connection to that. And that is really important to me. Now, another thing about that is that you talk about technology. So we had to figure out how to make money from the sheep that wasn't just a one-time take the lambs to market kind of a thing. And so my mother created a whole cottage industry out of spinning wool and making wool products, sheepskin, etc. And she was also very into organic farming. So we didn't use pesticides or any of those types of things. And today, that is a really popular thing, right? Oh, organic eggs are $12 a dozen in New York City on a city street. If you
But it's being marketed as though those are the more healthier options.
Yeah, because they are more healthy.
Right.
The thing is that in 1975, which is when we were owning the farm, 75 to 85, there's no social media. There's no way to,
gotcha, yeah.
there's no, now you could do, we'd have all kinds of cute Insta reels and about the sheep. And here we are shearing the sheep. We didn't have any of that. So we had to really work out how to get publicity and how to get people there. And so to that end, we were actually on a lot of TV shows, the local news, or we were featured quite frequently. But we also would go out to these festivals and sell products. And so I've been selling since I was like 10 years old, out of necessity.
And then seeing it too. Right. So as you're being exposed to that world, what is the contrast of being like when it comes to school, when you're going to school and they're kind of, and I've said this countless times on the show, but they're teaching the employee mindset. They're teaching the mindset of get an A, B, C, a D, or E, and all of a sudden you're accepted. You go to a fancy school, get a comfortable salary, and all of a sudden you are, quote unquote, we're pushed in that direction when you trust in the school system. But you're obviously seeing a completely different world. I'm building this. I'm seeing my mom actually reinvent the cottage industry. How is the school system? How are you gelling in it? How was it for you?
Yeah, great question. And I have two older sisters, and they're both better school students than I ever was. And we're pretty close in age. So there was a lot of crossover, like, why aren't you more like Ruth Ann or Jennifer, who for whatever reason did that better? And part of the reason for that is I hadn't really found my interest because we were all just taking those classes. I think that we really do ourselves a disservice with this A, B, C, D, E, you know, that you're failing. Like even the concept of failing for a business owner is a poor one, because
You're on the right show. The countless times we've talked about that, countless people. I don't know how many more people I have to bring on to say this, guys. It is not a good idea to let a kid's feelings, their worth, be tied into some grade. It is heinous. So thank you.
it is. And then adults do the same thing.
Same
We
thing. It
tie
doesn't.
our stuff
Yeah,
up. One
exactly.
of the things I hear people do a lot, and I'm not an advocate of, is try to boost themselves up.
Hmm.
Sometimes you'll stand in front of a mirror, they'll do these meditations. I deserve, I am worthy, I'm deserving.
Hmm.
And I'm just telling everybody right now, no one is buying anything from you because they feel like you deserve it.
Hmm.
They're buying it from you because they think you can solve their problem. They're only thinking about themselves. They're not like, you know what? That's one. He's the nicest guy. You know, he deserves more listeners. Let me get on there and listen. No, they're not doing that. They're
Yeah.
thinking, what am I going to get from this? And
Hmm.
so I feel like we have wrapped so much of our culture up into this grading system that's really different for everybody. And you know, who's to say the right progress? And I always like to say, you know, 10,000 or 100,000 years ago, no, the cave people were not sitting around going, how can I get an A today? You know, or how can I, like,
That's a good one.
but it took too long for
Yeah.
me. I'm procrastinating on getting out to gathering those berries today. Like they're not saying that. They're saying they're in the flow
Yeah.
of what the right thing is to be doing right now.
Exactly. And it leads to a sense of entitlement. Every type of school that you could imagine, I've been at that. I started out at a public school, went to a Catholic school, went to a small liberal arts college, went to community college, and went to Stony Brook, big public university. Then I had online courses. I've taught at a ton of different schools. So all of it is the same. And every single family situation, every single child is different. And it's so much about what you just said. It's where your passion's drawing you, where are you going? And I tell people all the time, again, if it wasn't for this sport right here, football, I wasn't going to college, but I ended up going to college because of the sport that I was already very passionate about. So, that leads me into asking you, when exactly did you find the thing that you really wanted to do and ultimately say, okay, I'll go to school, but it's because I get to do this specific thing. And then when I get into the real, quote unquote, real world, I'll kind of have an idea where I should be able to kind of plant my flag.
That's a great question. And as I mentioned, I had these two older sisters, and when the change came for me in my senior year of high school, when I decided, somehow I figured out I had an interest in photography. And
Ah.
my dad bought me a 35 millimeter camera,
Mhm.
pre-digital cameras, obviously.
Uh-huh.
And they had a little photo lab. And so that was the first teacher I ever had at that school that had never had an experience of my sisters.
Wow.
Obviously it wasn't a big school, they knew who they were and everything, but they couldn't compare me to
Mhm.
their experience, to their qualities.
Yeah.
So that
That's
was very
yeah, that's your
freeing.
thing, right?
That was very freeing. And
Mhm.
as a result, I ended up going to college as a photography major.
Hmm.
And art was very interesting to me. But what was interesting is, and I think about this a lot, when I left college, I never even tried to be a professional photographer.
Man, all right. Well, now you got to walk us through this. So, well, first
Not
of all, before you go there, walk us through a day in the life of a photography major in college because yeah,
first.
I have never met one. So please,
Oh,
that's a little bit on what and now I'm thinking now the reason I asked that is because with Instagram, with social media, it would almost seem like that interest would be a lot higher for kids now because I know people that get paid as professional photographers, that people hire videographers, all that kind of stuff.
mhm. Yeah, there's a big market for it. And of course, in school, one of the things they don't teach you about is how to market yourself as a photographer, as an artist, this whole starving artist type of
Yeah,
thing.
there's a lot of.
So what did I do? I went to a lot of really cool classes. I got to take photographs. I got to get in the lab. I got to learn about negatives. I had painting classes that were 3 hours long. I could go and, what do you do on Wednesday afternoon? I'm painting for 3 hours. You know what I would do? Just sit around and paint for 3 hours.
Mm.
I went to the junior year abroad. I went to England he would send us, the drawing teacher would send us off to different places in London. And
Wow.
we would just go to the fish market and we would just draw.
Wow.
So there was a lot of freedom and beauty in that, but there was no talk about what are you going to do when you get out and how
Yeah.
are you going to earn any money?
Yeah, that's what I
So
was gonna say. It sounds really therapeutic, but it's gonna happen. And any college students listening to me now, yes, the day is gonna come where you're gonna graduate, and you'll be there, and you will face that daunting question. You may be facing it right now. What are you gonna do? How you gonna make money? That's something that kind of grabs every college student by the throat, and they try to prolong that question for a very long time. So go ahead, share yours.
yeah. Well, what was interesting is there I was sitting on the lawn at the University of Bridgeport, which,
Hmm.
quick side of trivia, used to be the estate of P.T. Barnum.
Hmm.
So it was actually a very beautiful facility, very beautiful campus, a lot of mansions and things. It was quite nice. And I'm
Right.
sitting there and I'm reading the paper, the local paper, and there was an ad in there, something along the lines of, I'm looking for artist to rent space in my store.
Mm.
And I said, oh, I could take the products that my mother makes and I could get in and I could sell these products in this store.
Oh.
And so that, my friends, is what's called an avoidance technique.
Hmm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Not saying that was a bad idea. I'm saying that I was sitting on the precipice of graduation going, I have no idea how I'm going to make money with photography right now. So let me distract myself by doing this other thing,
Hmm.
which I was very close with my mother,
Right.
and we had a good business going, but she wasn't very good with money. She didn't have a business coach like me, so she didn't have a budget. It wasn't being managed, and it was a lot to manage.
Right.
So I thought I could help her by opening this store in South Norwalk, Connecticut. And for a while, it was pretty good. I sold some stuff. Mentally, it wasn't what I really wanted to do. Mindset wise, I didn't know anything about sales. I was like a storefront type of a thing.
Mhm.
It really wasn't my thing. It was her thing.
Mhm.
And eventually I just closed the store. It just wasn't working for me.
Hmm.
So it was like, I'm proud of having done it, but I also have that in my story of how I really didn't know what I was doing. And so this is where the statistics come, where people are failing in their business.
Right.
And yeah, seemed like
No,
it.
the reason I'm kind of thinking about it now is because nowadays people want to open up a store. They start like I do. I have an e-commerce store where you can sell online. I don't have to have any inventory. I don't have to pay any rent other than maybe hosting the website. And it's a completely different world. So as you're coaching entrepreneurs now, how do you direct that conversation? How do they come to you, look, I have these great products, and should I go pay for a franchise, or should I go pay for the rent at a specific space, or do I, just do sell online and figure out how to navigate the online world? How do you help them sort of navigate, seeing, especially having gone through what you went through? And I know that's not easy, by the way, shutting down a store, especially if it's something that you were doing, from the Hard family. That's
Right.
that is not an easy feeling at all. So
No, it
kudos
wasn't
to you
one
for
of the more
figuring that
pleasant
out.
experiences I've ever had in my life. Especially since I didn't really have any money.
Hmm.
And the farm was, 350 miles away, and I wasn't there physically. And one of the things that I think trips entrepreneurs up is the fact that they are always looking for the answer, the better way to do something, or they see someone else being very successful at something and they think, well, I should be able to do that.
Right.
And the first question you want to be asking about any of it is what's most authentic to you? Because if I again had a coach at the time or a mentor who would have said, okay, I hear that you want to open this store, Liz. Let's talk about your motivations for doing that. Let's talk about let's look at a business plan. Let's see what is that would be the best approach for you. I didn't have a business plan. I was just like, I don't know, it was some ridiculous thing like $400 a month to rent this space. And all I had to do was sell a certain amount of stuff. So I didn't have a plan. You need a plan.
Right.
And I want to know what's authentic for
Mhm.
you. What is sitting on a computer all day listing products something that makes you happy? Or do you want to engage with people as they come into a store?
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to be making physical, do you want to touch those physical products?
Right.
It's not always just about what's going to make you the most money.
Mm-hmm. Now, okay, so you closed on the store, and I saw you actually worked other jobs and stuff like that. Walk us through like the steps you took from the closing of the store to now becoming a, certified a business coach that helps on like very clear, I help entrepreneurs, and when you were able to make that what you do, 24 hours a day.
Yeah, which I love, by the way. So I came to New York City, didn't mention this yet, but I also had a love and desire to do music. So I'm a singer, and I don't really dance anymore, but I was like a singer and a dancer. And I was like, I didn't play any instruments except piano a little bit, and I wanted to be in a band. So
It's
I
so
actually,
crazy that I hate to cut you off there because it's so crazy how, and the school I teach, that's called the Center for Creative Education, and we actually bring in teaching artists to teach the kids certain like elements of art, and it's so crazy every time I meet another creative, it's like it aligns. You go from photography, then somebody introduces you to the drawing world, and then also maybe the singing, because so much of it aligns with just being creative and continuing to create new things. So I just have to put that, because creativity, and when you move in that direction, you listen to your intuition, as much as it may not feel like it's worth it because the money is not going to add up right away. Eventually you will tap into the right service, the right model, the right business, the right thing that you need to be doing to ultimately really set you free. Because that's what it is. It's actually being set free, being able to use your creativity to make money. That's a huge deal.
yeah. And I would modify what you said just a tiny little bit. I would add the words, what is the right thing for me to be doing right now? Because that does change. And I think that's one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs have, is they have a lot of interest, right? I actually really, I loved being I loved being a farmer. I
Yeah.
loved being a salesperson. I wasn't particularly good at it at that time. I loved being a photographer. I just didn't know what to do with it. And I
Yeah.
also loved music.
Yeah.
And I had a boyfriend who was in a band, and I thought that would be cool. So I wanted to do that too.
Okay.
So interestingly, I said, well, I need to get a job at this point. And I thought, let me move to New York City. And the job that I got was at the Manhattan School of Music.
There you go.
Of course, right? Of
There
course I
you
would
go.
find that
There
job.
you go. Right, right.
And and I have a funny story about that, because I was going through an employment agency, and the first job she sent me to was an ad agency. And the first thing they did was give me a typing test before they even talked to me, which I immediately failed.
Well, I'm laughing because I know my mother listens to the show, and I know she's smiling because when I was young, she would tell me to go practice my typing. Like, I'll give her so much shit. I'm like, ain't nobody doing that. And yeah, there you go, mom. All right.
Yeah. And you have to know
I
that
hear
that
you got
was
to do here, right?
that job, which was on West 57th Street. I'll never forget West 57th Street, because it was in the building that's curved. The front is curved. I forget the name. It's 9 West 57th Street.
Right.
And a big red 9 in front. And I walked out of that building so defeated, because the woman didn't even talk. She wasn't unkind. She said to me, you have to type 35 words a minute, and you're welcome to come back if you can pass the typing test. And I walked out of there, and I had to go to a payphone, and I called the employment person. I said, never send me to another job. If they don't even want to talk to me, do not send me to that job. And so she said, well, I have this other job for $14,000 a year. That one was 15. It's at the Manhattan School of Music. And that was like one of those, it aligned, right? Because I wanted to do music and I needed a job.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. And I was willing to work for, yes,
Yeah.
$14,000 a year.
Right.
And so,
And also you have the boyfriend in the band, right?
I dumped him by then.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I mean, it was still part of you would have still liked that.
I was still had these strong
Right.
aspirations. I had moved to New York City. I thought, well, what better place to be than hang out in a school of music?
Exactly.
And sure enough, I met some really cool people. But the thing that I learned at the Manhattan School of Music was I learned how to use WordPerfect, which was just coming out at the time. I know I'm aging myself, but I'm not having no issues with sharing my age. So,
Are we
Word,
talking about Microsoft Word or Word?
Microsoft, no, WordPerfect. This
It,
is DOS days, my friends.
oh man, okay. Yeah, you teaching
Yeah.
me something. I'm more of a Microsoft Word.
Well, this is pre-Microsoft. There
Okay.
was Apple. Well, it wasn't pre-Microsoft because Microsoft DOS,
Right.
but it was all text-based.
Okay.
Okay. I still remember the moment my friend showed me you could spell check. I was like, whoa, are you kidding me? And what I did, what I found out was I had this knack to, we had the manual there and I read the whole manual and I learned the whole software. And then I found out that in New York City, there's a big demand for people who know how to use computers. And so I learned how to get out into I quit that job and I went out and I started earning double the money by just being like a temp. I just did temp jobs for months, which gave me an opportunity to get all around the city. And then I learned desktop publishing, which was on the Apple, because then now you see how I'm bringing my art back into it.
That's amazing.
Right. So now I'm like, oh, I know how to do art. I know how to do computers. And then somebody said to me, I want to learn how to use that desktop publishing program. Can you teach me? And I said, sure, because that was $50 an hour. And then I started teaching people how to use computers. And because I was very good at reading the manual, translating that information and then translating it and giving it to people. And that's a skill that I have, which is I always called, I'm in the one step ahead program, right? I'm doing it all.
Right.
I'm learning it all. I'm listening to the books. I'm doing the conferences. I'm paying for those $10,000 courses. So you don't have to. So that I'm just going to give you the information that is most helpful to you. And that really is the skill that I was learning during that time.
And I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that I picked up when some of the videos that I was watching previously just to prepare for this is you are big on systems. You are so huge on making sure entrepreneur has a solid system that they could depend on so they can do their art while the system is working harder than them and they could focus on their craft. So I'll just give you the opportunity to kind of speak about that a little bit when you were able to finally get into coaching and again, the listeners are the regular ones probably are tired of hearing me talk about this, but I think it's that important because systems. It is so important to establish your system so you can enjoy a podcast like this and you don't have to be the one, typing away or be the one maybe scheduling this and doing all the stuff that's keeping you away from the professional development that you need. So the systems, Jay, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, the systems, and that came out of me learning about CRM software. Again, I think
that's a lovely word over here to move something. CRM, baby.
CRM.
Yes.
And what again, I think in so many ways I was fortunate because when I started learning about CRM, it was pretty new. Salesforce didn't even exist.
Yeah.
There was Act and there was Maximizer, and Act fell by the wayside, and I became a Maximizer reseller. And they're a company out of Vancouver. And then I got my husband to quit his job.
Right.
And sell, because what we do is we sell Maximizer, we sell it and implement it. And it's an awesome CRM system that we've been selling and implementing since all the years of our business. Right. And I've been married now 28 years. We just celebrated our 28th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Yes.
And he quit his job like 2 months after we got married. Right. So that's how I remember how long we've been in business. Right. And CRM software, and in the case of Maximizer being the one that we personally sell, I read a story once of a veterinarian who lived like in the 20s in England. And he has his awesome books that he talks about his adventures, and they're entertaining and funny. But there's a scene that he describes where he goes in, this farmer had this crop of baby calves who had gotten sick from something. And he administered penicillin to them. And penicillin was so new, it had just started being used in situations like that, that the next day when he went back, he could see the impact of it. And I always think about that when I think about applying systems, applying, using a CRM software, which people kind of take for granted now. But at that time, in the mid 90s, late 90s, there was Rolodexes on people's desks, like,
Yeah.
right? They had speed dials on their phone.
Right.
They had yellow pages my husband used to look through to call people, to sell. So having that CRM was so impactful.
Yeah. All right. Obviously, CRMs were very doing. That's a great analogy, actually, because it does save a lot of entrepreneurs a lot of headaches. All right. But the issue now is when social media became a thing and people started maybe using like Facebook as a CRM or Instagram as a way of tracking their contacts and all that. How were you able to navigate and kind of explain to people, hey, that's somebody else's land. You're building on, friends and all that kind of stuff. That's Mark Zuckerberg. And if they want to cut that well off, you're not communicating with these people. How are you coaching people through that to say, I get you got a big Facebook or social media following, but it's still going to be your obligation to get people off there and build an email list where people are actually communicating with you.
Yeah, you don't want anyone else to be in control of your business in any way. You got to look at that like that's a storefront. But once people walk in that door, you're capturing their information and creating that could be through Messenger even. But at the very basic level, that's not a system.
Right.
You are never going to be able to keep track of every communication you've had. I mean, look, just everybody pick up your phone right now. Well, not right now, but later pick up your phone and look through and check on all the texts you haven't responded to yet, or even emails that you got buried in your email list or on your email. Like all of those are not systems. Those are, let's call them feeders, right? Those are ways that you can make connections with people, which are really important. I do want to say this one thing too. This is almost completely lost. Nobody wants to talk on the phone anymore.
No,
Remember this thing that's called
messages.
phone. You pick it up and you dial numbers and you hold it to your ear.
Yes, it makes sense, right?
And you talk to human beings. You talk to people and they respond. It's really cool. They actually want to talk to you too. My husband has always used his name's John. He has always at any time of the day or night, you're going to see him communicating with people. And you say, well, get on LinkedIn, nah, he doesn't like to do that. He will call people that he talked to 6 months ago. Why? Because he has that in his CRM. He goes in there and he goes, I talked to this guy 6 months ago. And 6 months ago, because I deliberately put notes in to indicate where he was in his process, he said, I'm not going to do that until May. And he's going to call them back in May because he had a note and he had communication. Now, you could call that discipline, but I feel very strongly that discipline is the after effect, right? It's the system that if you follow the system, you become disciplined as a result.
Yeah, you did an incredible job distinguishing those two, because discipline is something that a lot of us are trained as a good thing, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. However, it's only so much you can do without a system, and discipline, again, it's going to be more of a personal thing. Like I'm disciplined when it comes to running every single morning because I'm training for a marathon, and the system that I have in place is I know, hey, I got to make sure I hit my mileage. I got to make sure I'm properly hydrating, and without that system, a lot of these things don't get done. So that's a very valid point too. And actually, a funny story with the email thing is, you're right, they do get lost. I hired a business coach as well. Shout out to Dre. And I had actually sent him a message, and he saw my inbox was 25,000 unread emails. And after his advice, he goes, well, how do you have 25,000 unread emails? I'm like, man, I've done a lot of stuff, man. I've signed up to a lot of different things. So it was him who really taught me to, move over that to a software, move a lot of that into funnels and build things out. So when people do come into your world, you actually have a way of making sure that you're following up with them and that that relationship continues to build in whatever way it's going to be. So, all being said, you do coach people, and I want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about your coaching business. How do people work with you? What do you help them kind of go through?
Yeah, well, mostly the people that I talk to are people that are either new in business and want to start a business, or have a business already and want to move into something else, which of course a lot of entrepreneurs, let's face it, you get a business, you build it up. You said a lot of people on here have companies that are fairly large, but there's always that, very frequently, I don't say always, but very frequently, there's always that thing in the back of your mind, like, you know what I'd also like to do? Because when I look at my own career and I think, okay, I did CRM for a while. He's still doing that. He does that all the time. He's very happy doing that. And then I said, you know what? I'm kind of bored with the technology. I like the part where you deal with people's the systems they're setting up, their mindset, the accountability, being the sounding board. I love helping people figure out what are the problems that they're having, and how do they finagle through that. Sometimes I almost feel like my job can be a little too easy, where I just sit there and listen to people, and then they go, and then by the end they're like, yeah, you're right, I should do that. I'm like, so glad you came up to that answer by yourself, because all I did was listen to you. But what I'm doing is
coaching too. For anyone that's on be in the coaching business, listening is easily 85% of the job. You got to actually listen to the people, and not just because you don't know what they're going to need until you actually let them get out whatever it is they're trying to say.
Yeah, listening and reflecting. So that's the second part of it is, well, what I'm hearing you say is that you think you want a part-time job, but you hate working for other people. So maybe you don't need a part-time job, maybe, whatever it is. I'm just coming up with an example there. And so there's the coaching part of it is people who feel stuck. Those are the people that I love to work with, people who feel stuck either because they want to grow more, or because they want to get started. A lot of people have other obligations. They don't know how to let go of those obligations, or they feel afraid to make any kind of move to do a next thing, because what they've been doing so far has been working for them. And they just, even if it's boring, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to in my life, you probably have too, are just like, yeah, but I only have 5 more years before I can retire. I'm like, oh my God, sounds like torture to me.
Man, there's a lot of that. There's a ton of that. And they show up and just do it anyway. So what would you say is, for anyone listening in, what you say is next? Are you planning on just having your own consulting firm, or opening, what's in the next process that you see envisioning for coaching?
For me? Yeah. Well, first of all, other people talk about retirement. I don't really think in those terms. I already have, what's so wonderful about being an entrepreneur is time freedom and money freedom. Those are the 2 things that people are mostly looking for. So I feel that I've put my years in for the money freedom part. Take care of your money, pay attention to your money, treat your money like a dog. Okay. Don't treat it like a cat or a house plant. Treat your money like a dog, and it will be very friendly and happy to be with you.
Yes.
And take care of it. So I'm at this point in my career, I'm looking at, okay, where can I make the greatest impact? I am launching an online course. I have a quiz that people can take, which will help you to figure out your entrepreneurial style. And that's my main way that I bring people into my world is, hey, take this quiz. It's fun, it's quick, and it tells you, it gives you a lot of information about your style of working, so that you can figure out why you feel stuck. And so launching that, I also I would love to mention that I'm also play music. As you know, I've mentioned that. And so that too has come full circle.
Back on it.
Right?
Okay, I
so
see you.
I have a site that I launched called bluegrassjamsnearme.com. bluegrassjamsnearme.com. So if anybody on this call plays bluegrass music or is interested in bluegrass music, which is a community-based musical experience.
Okay.
There, I lead a lot of bluegrass jams in New York City, and my vision for this site is that no matter where you are in the world, if you want to find a bluegrass jam, and there's one within 100 miles, you can go on my site and you can find where it is.
All right, well now you have to send me a copy of a track or something because that will definitely be added to this episode at the end. All
Okay.
right, so you have to send me the MP4, the file because I got to tune into it. And again,
Yeah.
I guess I would consider myself a weirdo. I listen to everything from Tupac to Tracy Chapman to Nickelback. I'm like, if you looked at you're like, this is one weird, really, really to gospel, anything. So please send
Why
it to
not add bluegrass to that, right?
add some bluegrass. Yes, yes. So you got to send me that. So,
Yeah.
the final thing I do, Liz, well, first of all, how can people besides bluegrass, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, LizWolfeCoaching.com. So if you didn't get the joke yet, last name's Wolf, grew up on a sheep farm. It's always good to make that connection. It helps you remember.
I'm not sure if that wasn't intentional though. That couldn't have been intentional, was it?
No, my mother's last name was Wolf. I mean, my father's last name was Wolf. She married, yep, and Wolf with an E, though. That's important. And we used to have these t-shirts, Wolf's the name, sheep's the game. It
What
was
is this? I'm now making the connection myself. You were built for the marketing thing, man. I'm getting excited.
I know.
You were built for it. Sheep's the name. Okay. Man, okay. I thought, listen, again, as I promised you listeners, this is what we do here. We keep it all the way authentic, and you're going to be getting something. You just hit me with something. So, like I was saying though, the final thing I do with all the shows is the way I close it out is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are just graduated college. You started up this store, and you officially had to shut it down, and you were lost. Job hunting in New York City, which I know for a fact is an absolute really, really difficult task. So pretend that version of Liz has come into the Zoom room, give her some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
I think if I were to say someday, Liz, you're going to have a website, lizwolfecoaching.com, and you're daily going to be touching people and inspiring them and moving them to taking action in their life that they had never imagined. And as I don't want to, lost isn't quite the word, as confused perhaps as you are, as what is the right thing for me to be doing? Trust that everything you're doing is the right thing right now and that it's going to lead you to a very beautiful life. I have a townhouse in New York City. I bought a place upstate, so I have that nature. I'm married for 28 years, people. That's a long time. Two beautiful children. And I have a wonderful business that I love. I get to play music with friends. As I said, do my coaching, and I still get to be creative in everything that I do. So I would say to that young woman, keep going because it's on the right track.
Yes, and as you were talking, I got chills because I'm thinking of the teenage version, the school version of you that, was seeing these grades levels and probably feeling a little isolated. And now look at you, didn't matter what life threw at you, whether it's just typing, whether it's just creating a CRM, your creativity, the way you built your creativity is what continued to push you through day after day. And that's what we inspire. That's what we love over here. So again, appreciate it. Looking forward to staying in touch. Looking forward to getting my track too. I want to be listening to that. I want to be listening to that during my run. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.
Thank you.